September 25th, 2024. And as the year goes on, then there's certain things that happen each year. There's the pulse of the year at Abhayagiri. And sometimes there's a few older things that don't happen anymore, and there's newer things that do happen. So one of the newer annuals is, this is the second year, 2-year anniversary of Metika passing away. And then one of the older annuals that won't be happening this year is the Thanksgiving retreat. So that's not happening this year. But as time goes on, there's also this feeling of the impending winter retreat, and time rolls on. So the year keeps going on, and it doesn't seem like that long ago that it was just New Year's Day 2024. Then over time, as we live our Dhamma lives, live our lives of practice, then if we stick with it, then the practice deepens. And what are some of the ways that we can know the practice is working? We do these reflections on anicca, on impermanence, on uncertainty. And one of the signs that this starts to become internalized is that we become more okay with uncertainty. So it's, for most of us, that's a tough one. And at the ultimate level, then a samana, a religious seeker, has no future. Ajahn Chah was known to say that a samana has no future. That can sound very bleak, like that would usually be a negative thing. Like, oh, this person has no future. That's not a good thing. But in our own discipline, it is a good thing. What a relief to not have a future. It's not in the negative sense of not having a future, like, oh, he's not doing anything with his life, but it's more in the sense of Dhamma, in terms of the future is unknown, the future is uncertain. So as we train with these recollections and contemplations of uncertainty and impermanence, then we become more and more okay with uncertainty, with not knowing what's going to happen. And it's like a death contemplation, so not knowing what's going to happen in the future, not knowing when we're going to die. We will die at some point, and that's a contemplation or recollection that we should do regularly, and we don't know when it will happen. And so that can help with that sense of just cutting through the proliferations or taking refuge in a illusory future and just coming back to the present. And a samana has no past as well. So there have been things for all of us that have happened in the past, but we needn't define ourselves by that past. So we can actually be freed from that. So with no future and no past, then there is just the present. So there are these 4 iddhipadas, these 4 bases of success, and it's said that if you cultivate them, then you can actually achieve anything, worldly or spiritual. And whatever we want to do, whether it's to stay up late on a meditation vigil or learn some sort of new skill, then these 4 iddhipadas are really the way to do it. This is chanda, virya, chitta, vimamsa. So chanda is desire, and if we don't want to do something, if we don't cultivate a desire or a wish to do something, then we won't do it. It won't just happen automatically. So with this chanda, desire, this drive to do something, so that's how the practice works. It's not that we just sit and something happens. We don't know. It's not that we just sit in meditation and then if we wait long enough, then wisdom will arise or something will happen. It doesn't work like that. So chanda, having to cultivate a sense of desire, and virya. Virya is the energy or the effort that we apply to look into how we achieve our desire, how we achieve our aim. And then chitta is the application of mind, putting our heart into the activity. So we get interested, we apply our mind to the activity, whatever it may be. And then vimamsa. Vimamsa is reviewing. So whatever application of effort, whatever application of mind that we put into the activity, did it work? Did it not work? How did it go? And what was the result of that way I was relating to how to learn that thing or how to achieve my aim? And then it circles around back to rekindling the desire to keep going further, to try new things, and to see how do we do this. So, and then there's the frustration. There will be a frustration that comes about, which is actually a necessary factor in learning. So when we try to learn something new and we acknowledge that we don't know how to do this yet, we don't really know how to cultivate that sense of no future. We don't really know how to see and realize the truth of uncertainty and impermanence. So looking into it, then there could be a sense of frustration, and there might be a sense of the mind even rebelling, like, no, actually, why do I have to give up all these things and come here and practice? And why are these monks doing this thing? And this doesn't make sense. And giving up all these good things in the world and enduring all sorts of privations. This doesn't make sense. Right. Come back. I'm just trying to learn how to meditate. Right. Okay. Doesn't, they're just doing their thing. Okay. So bringing the mind back. And the frustration will tend to lead toward the mind going down various bypaths, various tracks. And then, because there is a sense of resistance, so learning something difficult, it is frustrating, but then there is a strong sense of gratification when we are able to learn how to do something difficult. And from time to time, I like to bring up the analogy of learning how to sharpen. And I was able to get into this several years ago, the sharpening straight razors. And that opened up the whole world of sharpening for me into also, because you use the same principle for knife sharpening as well. So learning about sharpening, and it's actually not that easy to learn. There's a lot of frustration that can take place if you're learning how to sharpen something. And of course, I wanted to get any knife I sharpen, I wanted it to be samurai sword sharp. So there's these tests that you do where you float the knife over your skin, not touching your skin, and then the hairs are supposed to kind of fall in half as you run the knife over. So that's not that easy to get it to that point, because it's not just about using a finer sharpening stone. It's not just about doing more sharpening strokes. At first it is. So you start with a coarser sharpening stone, and this could be likened to sila. This could be likened to the holding of precepts. So that really can wear away just the really rough edges. And so if you have a knife that's really dull and it just doesn't cut anything, then you need a very coarse sharpening stone, and you can run it back and forth. First, you have to find the bevel. And if you're freehand sharpening, then you find that bevel and you go back and forth and you make sure not to bite the edge into the sharpening stone. Or you can use a guide. That's another way to do it. But it doesn't take that long to redo the bevel on the stone. Then you can move up to the next stone. And then each successive finer sharpening stone, you're going to have to go quite a bit longer. So you move up to, say, a medium, in the medium ranges of stones, that could be likened to samadhi, and then you have to go quite a bit longer. So the precepts, the sila, we take on the precepts. It's going to wear away those rough edges right at the outset. And then the samadhi, it's not just going to have results if we only do it a little bit or meditate here and there. And sometimes people might ask a question, well, my practice doesn't seem to be working. I've been practicing for 10 years, 20 years. Well, how much a day do you meditate? Oh, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes just, I'll go weeks without meditating. And well, that's not the way to get results. So results come only with the effort. The desire has to be stronger. The effort has to be stronger. The application of mind has to be stronger. It's going to take more than that. So we do have to sit for longer periods of time. We do have to do walking meditation for longer periods of time, or else nothing's going to change. So we need to rub the knife on the medium grade sharpening stones for a longer period of time. If we just jump up to the finer stone thinking, okay, well, I want to get straight to the finish, I want to get this done, then the finer stones don't do anything if you haven't fully used the medium grade stones. So you might want to go up to a higher grit stone right away. You're going to rub away on that. It's not really going to do very much. So we need to take our time, and then eventually, the knife might start to get sharper and we might start to be able to use it for various things. But it's not yet razor sharp. It's not yet truly sharp. So then we get to the point where we take it to the finer stones. This could be like the cultivation of panya, of wisdom, discernment. Now this is where it gets a little bit difficult, because we might have a finer stone and we might have sharpened the knife for many, many hours even, and then suddenly we find it doesn't cut. What's going on? This doesn't make sense. So there's this phenomenon known as overhone. You can actually overdo it. And when you have overhone, then it's actually not going to cut very well at all. If you have it underhoned, you're finding this balance between underhone and overhone. So underhone is like, say you're trying to shave your arm hairs, then underhoned, it's going to like pull on the hairs a bit, and overhone is just going to glide over them without cutting them. So at this point, you're working with microscopic levels. You can't looking at the knife, it won't look any different. It'll look like it's very sharp. And so there are various ways to not have overhone. So if you're using like a fine Japanese stone, water stone, and then you use a Nigura stone to create a little slurry on the top of it, that's one way to prevent overhone, in that on a microscopic level, those little slurry particles are keeping this, it's like this little metal, overhone is like a little metal tube that can form right on the edge. And so that's why it actually keeps it from getting very, very sharp. It's actually too much. So we have to tone it down a bit and change the pressure. We play around with the pressure of our hands. And this can be very frustrating, because it actually seems like, well, I'm following all the instructions, it should be working. But yes, we are following all the instructions, but we don't have a feel for it yet. We don't have an intuitive sense for it yet. So that learning still has to take place. So with wisdom, with discernment, we may have thought that we've had various insights, but then somebody says something disagreeable to us and we still get triggered by it. We still get set off. So, okay, so it's not there yet. It's not fully internalized yet. So when we work with this interplay between underhone and overhone, and we try different things, and we're subtly changing the angle of the blade a little bit, and then the time comes after, for me, it took me about 6 months to learn sharpening before I could get it to this point of 6 months of pretty diligent practice. And wow, the satisfaction of actually seeing those hairs just fall in half. And wow, that's amazing. It's so sharp. But then repeating that, being able to repeat that, the frustration comes up again. Okay, I did it once. Can I do it again? And then starting over with another knife. And can I do this again? And that frustration is going to come up again. So actually getting to the point where the intuitive knowledge of it or the feeling of it is enough that we can then repeat the process. So this is why we call it practice. This is what practice is. And this is just exactly the same with what we're trying to do here with living in the monastery and attempting to overcome the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. It's just, we're going to get tripped up. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be resistance. But then over time, if we keep looking into things and we keep practicing and we keep moving forward, we keep just really making those micro adjustments. And it's not like we're having to micro adjust every moment. Sometimes, for example, sometimes with sharpening, it's just that patience, that cultivation of patience of just doing those repeated movements on the sharpening stone for a long period of time and just not expecting the quick results, just letting go of all the expectations. And that's something that then we'll start to be a little bit more okay with the uncertainty. We'll start to maybe acquire a taste for learning how to learn, and embracing that frustration that goes along with learning. And nobody's going to get it right at the beginning. So the precepts that we hold and the practices that we do in the monastery, it's not about putting ourselves in a box or making ourselves into perfect practitioners, keeping the precepts perfectly from the outset. We're going to try to do that because we're sincere, but there's always going to be mistakes. And a lot of the life in the monastery is about how we relate to mistakes when we make them, how we relate to failure when we do fail, and we inevitably will. That inevitably will happen. So how do we relate to that? How do we pick ourselves back up and dust ourselves off and keep going? So coming back to the idea of these iddhipadas, the 4 bases of success, we do need to keep rekindling that desire, that chanda. Now, in the Four Noble Truths, we talk about desire as the cause of suffering. That's a different word, that's tanha. And tanha and chanda are both types of desire. These are both translated as desire. But in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha uses the word tanha. And then chanda can be wholesome or unwholesome. You can have kama chanda, which is desire for sensuality, or you can have Dhamma chanda, which is the desire for Dhamma. And chanda, I think of chanda, there's a feeling tone to it, which is different than tanha. And tanha maybe has more of like a drunken, murky quality to it. And chanda has more of like a sense of like drive or like moving into something. So we're cultivating that chanda over and over again, that Dhamma chanda, in order to learn about these things the Buddha talked about, to undertake the practices that are suggested for us. We're invited to do this. The Buddha invites us to do these practices that we find in the suttas, these reflections, these contemplations, whether it's metta, kammatthana, the cultivation of goodwill for ourselves and others, or whether it's just the reflections on impermanence, that's anicca anusati, or whether it's anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing, the cultivation of various types of mindfulness, for example, kayagata sati, the recollection of the body or body contemplation, marananusati, death, recollection of death contemplation. So any of these practices that we take on, we can apply this. Okay, I want to know about this. I want to gain some insight into this. So that's the Dhamma chanda. And then the virya is the looking at it from different angles. We could also think of virya as just doing the practice, engaging in the sitting meditation, engaging in the walking meditation. And then as we're engaging in sitting and walking meditation, then engaging the mind to look into that. And that bleeds into the chitta, which is the putting our heart into the activity. And then the vimamsa, perhaps afterwards, we don't have to be reviewing all the time, but then sometime when we've maybe finished that meditation or done a period of that practice, how's it going? It's like picking the knife up off the sharpening stone, washing it off, cleaning it off, and checking it. We might even have a microscope or a lens that we can be checking it. So that's like the vimamsa. Or we could even think of the iddhipadas as just wanting to experience a quiet mind, the still mind, and what are the different ways we can do that? What are the different ways we can accomplish that? So just looking into it and reflecting on it. Perhaps it's going to be different for everybody. If the mind is stirred up about something, it could be anything. How do we shift the focus? For myself, I like to shift the focus to just listening to the crickets, just listening to the sounds of nature. Helps the mind to settle a bit. So these are just a few brief reflections. I don't want to go on for too long tonight. There's been various comings and goings, so I'll just leave it there.